You're listening to an audiobook adaptation of the novel Hidden in the Sun, written by Audrey Marie Inman. Chapter 9.
I stared up at the sky, watching the snow fall around me. Everything was so white, giving this ethereal glow. It was stunningly beautiful. I felt strangely happy as I danced around the beautiful white tufts. It was confusing because I couldn't actually feel the cold. I knew it was supposed to be, but the fact that it wasn't made it that much more enjoyable.
Evelyn.
My sister's voice called out to me lightly, to which I glanced at her direction. I couldn't find her, though. Lena? I called back and heard a giggle in response. She must be playing hide and seek again. We've played it so many times already. You'd think she would get tired of it. But I guess at 8 years old, energy is simply inexhaustible.
Come find me,
she said behind me. I turned and saw nothing but chased snow.
over here.
I heard in a different direction. Was she always so quick? Well, where are you? I said with a small laugh. Man, she was getting good at this game. Everything became silent then. In that same moment, I realized I could see my breath, and an icy chill raised goosebumps along my exposed skin. I should have grabbed a jacket, I thought with a frown. Lena? I called, unsure if she had one on. No response. I walked in the direction I thought I had her a moment ago. Lena, come on, it's starting to get cold. Mom and Dad will kill me if you get sick.
Mommy.
I heard a broken, quiet voice that I could scarcely recognize as Lena's, say raggedly, seconds before the white snow turned red. Blood was sprayed and dragged across it. My eyes followed it to a lifeless little girl collapsed on the ground in a puddle of red beneath her, and painted cruelly across her frozen skin. The ice sticking to her lashes made it seem as though she had been there much longer than it felt. Lena! I screamed, running to her in disbelief. The farther I ran, the farther from me she seemed to be, and soon I found I was out of breath, tears staining my eyes.
Why didn't you save me?
Her soft, sweet voice came behind me. I turned sharply to see her standing in the snow barefoot, blood still painted on her the way I remember. Lena, I didn't know, I didn't. I struggled between sobs.
You promised you would protect me from the monsters. Why didn't you save me?
She said, her voice filled with more conviction, her young eyes full of disgust and hatred. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't move. My feet wouldn't let me, as if the snow had frozen over my feet.
Yes.
A voice drawled out.
Why didn't you save her?
I glanced back up to find a man in Lena's place. It was him, the one who commonly haunted my nightmares. You? I said in utter horror. You did this. His red eyes stared sinisterly back at me in pure amusement. They're my family, I shouted at him in pure disgust. He laughed as if I had tickled him with my words before his eyes turned to me, sobering up.
This didn't happen because of me, Evelyn.
He whispered in my ear suddenly behind me. It was the farthest thing from pleasant as possible. What was he talking about? He was there. He almost killed me with them, and maybe he should have. What do you mean? I tried bravely, but my voice came out as a scarce whisper to which he seemed to revel in. Suddenly in front of me, he stroked a stone-cold finger down the side of my face.
Time is too short for such trivial questions,
he said, and evaporated into mist before my eyes.
We're more alike than you think.
I felt his cold breath on my neck and quickly jerked as far away as possible, only to end up inches from his marble-carved face. I was suddenly filled with an unearthly rage. I'm nothing like you, I whispered, ashamed at how timid it came out.
What was that?
He said with a laugh, making a mockery of me. You're a monster, I screamed. This really made him laugh as the edges of my vision became mist-like.
We both know who the real monster is,
he said with a final look that unnerved me.
Evelyn.
he dragged out in a breathy hiss as he was devoured by the dark mist. I rose with a gasp, clutching the blankets to my neck, eyeing my darkened room with fear. The light peeking through the curtains only near the bottom. He wasn't here, though. I could tell. With a shaky sigh, I run my fingers through my slightly tangled hair, glancing at the clock. 3:52 p.m. I scoffed and roughly tossed the covers off of me, knowing I would find no more reprieve of sleep today. Will I ever get adjusted to this schedule? It's Monday. In a few hours, I will finally start my time here at New Haven. And so far, it's starting out rocky. I had slept the weekend away peacefully for the first time in months, and had hoped that maybe, just maybe, it was the end of them. But tonight, or rather, today, was something else altogether. It was so vivid. He was so real. Lena was so real. This can't be normal. We both know who the real monster is. His words echoed roughly through my head. What does that even mean? I growled, throwing on a sweatshirt. I needed to leave. There was only one place I could think of to clear my thoughts. The roof. I suddenly paused, the cold doorknob in hand. Would he be there? I quickly shrugged off that possibility. It would be a miracle if I passed anyone at all on my trip there, seeing as it was mid-afternoon, and even the humans seemed adjusted to the schedule. I was right to assume that as I pushed through the roof door unnoticed by those too deep in sleep. I envied them. At least their dreams weren't haunted by demons. With a heavy frown, I walked to the edge, hopping up where the eldest prince had stood before. I couldn't stay feeling so close to falling, so I settled for sitting, my legs dangling off the side. My nerves calmed as I stared at the passing cars. There was just something serene about city life even during the day, almost magical. Maybe it was because the weather had a crisper feel to it with its cool winter sting on the horizon, but something about it spoke to me in a way I needed. I reveled in the sun peeking through the dreary sky, warming my skin in the smallest of ways. I sighed heavy, pulling one knee up and resting my head on it. Lena suddenly came to mind. She had looked at me so heartbroken and angry. Was that, on some level, her spirit calling out to me of its unrest? She had been so real. Right there. Even in my dreams, I couldn't save her. I thought sullenly.
Couldn't sleep?
A twinkling, velvety voice coded me from behind. I glanced back, startled. I hadn't seen her small silhouette peeking around the tall, glass-paneled window sticking up from the roof.
I didn't mean to scare you.
Her light voice chimed monotonously, stepping forward, stopping just at the edge beside me. Oh, I didn't see you is all. It was true. Normally, I am very observant of my surroundings. But I must have been too lost in thought. Why are you up at this hour? I asked, suddenly curious. The only reason anyone would be up at this ungodly hour is either for work or because their nights were haunted by the demons of their past. She just seemed too young for that. She stepped closer as the sun disappeared again behind the clouds. Her hands were hidden behind her back, nightgown blowing in the wind. Something about her made me feel uneasy, even if she was a child. She couldn't have been more than 12, but she seemed too still. Stared too long. Suddenly, her hands wound from around her back, revealing a beautiful, glowing flower. It was similar to the blue flowers I loved so much, save for the color.
I wanted to plant my flower in the garden,
she said, looking at it preciously. I smiled softly, unable to look away from the golden flower. It looked so majestic, so irresistible. What a perfect place, I mumbled, and she looked up at me, her dark eyes striking against her pale skin.
I thought so. Would you like to hold it? It smells so wonderful,
she said slowly, inching it towards me, and I simply couldn't resist. I was too curious, and it was too beautiful. My fingers grasped the stem, and my eyes fluttered closed on their own as I leaned in to smell the beautiful flower. Its scent smelled of honeysuckles and daisies, its smell completely intoxicating.
Evelyn,
A familiar voice shouted, breaking me from my small trance as my eyes shot open to look in his direction. Jameson, I mumbled in a daze. Suddenly, he was in front of me, ripping the flower from my hands with his leather-gloved coverings. In his hand, the flower looked strikingly different. Hey, I protested, jumping forward to take back my flower before he ruined it. But he shoved a hand against my chest, holding me back with ease.
where did you get this?
He demanded, his brilliant blue eyes darker than I had ever seen anyone's eyes suddenly become. I smiled loopily with a giggle. Was he jealous of my flower? Maybe the girl had more. The little girl over. My own words fell off as I looked at the empty place she once stood.
What girl?
He asked, anxiously, trying to understand. My head whipped around confused as I shoved past him, looking around the entire rooftop. I turned back to him with a frown when a sudden, intense, nauseating dizziness caused me to fall to my hands and knees with a groan.
Evelyn, what's wrong?
He said, kneeling next to me in a flash, discarding the flower a few feet away. My eyes wandered up to see 3 of him. I shook my head out of habit, but it made everything so much worse. My head. I moaned, squeezing my eyes shut tightly. I can't. I stopped harshly with a choking sound as my throat closed around the words, a violent cough raking its way up my chest. My hands rushed up out of habit to cover it, and found blue mixed with black coating my fingers, in striking contrast to the white blanketed world around me. I quickly closed my hand to hide the strange sight. It was only then, in that split-second glance, that I noticed the irregular marks on my hand. It was as if I had gripped thorns, the pattern looking like a strange black rash of decay. Immediately, my eyes darted to the flower he had discarded on the ground a few moments ago. The black flower was beautiful in its own right, almost like a black tulip with a furry stem, but nowhere near the golden flower I once held. Night Shadow, I whispered in stunned shock before meeting those sapphire eyes once again. This time in fear. I had known about this flower for a long time. My father had schooled me severely on the deadly effects of it, saying that it wouldn't hurt my sister or my mother. But he and I were different. Touching one could make us sick for days, but to smell one would bring surefire death without proper immediate treatment.
Do you have any idea how dangerous this is to my kind? Why would you bring this here?
He asked, sapphire eyes darkening with anger. I felt sick. All I could do was shake my head, staring at the flower, horrified. But even that small movement caused a sharp pain to stab its way through my lungs. I cried out, holding my chest.
Evelyn, what's wrong?
He said, seeming to truly take notice of my state for the first time. Tears welled up, blurring my vision with a dark film, but he ripped my hand away from my face the moment I tried to clear my eyes. Now he looked horrified, staring at my hand covered in black.
That's not possible.
I heard him whisper. A cough ripped through me once again, lighting my lungs afire as more of the strange mixture sprayed my hand, coating my lips and dripping down my chin. His eyes were wild and confused, almost frozen. Can vampires go into shock? Help me, I rasped as my world began to swim and I fell into him. In a sudden jolt of panic, I gripped his shirt tightly with wide, blurry eyes. Hanabusa, I wheezed. He had to take me to him. It seemed to shake him out of his trance as he scooped me up like I weighed less than a feather. My world swam and warped around me. My heart rate skyrocketed, trying to shoot out of my chest with painful sparks.
Hold on,
he said, and it felt as if I was being torn apart in a freezing molecular frenzy before coming together again. The dully gray sky replaced by a dark, wooden vaulted ceiling with square patterns swimming around my vision. I would have puked had I not already been so lost in the dizzy, painful haze I was trapped in. A sharp pain shot through my hand, causing a whimper to tumble out of my burning throat. The voices around me were dull and scattered, making no sense. I found it increasingly hard to stay conscious as I vaguely felt another sharp pain centered on my neck. It was nothing compared to the forest fire in my lungs. Something warm touched my lips, and a strange, familiar sweetness spilled past my lips, coating my tongue enough to stop the burn, but not enough to stop the darkness overtaking me. A pair of brilliant blue eyes came sharply into focus for a mere moment, and then without choice or pain, I gave in to the sweet, calming darkness.